Recently, I was in a supermarket waiting for my groceries to be rung up. I was about fourth or fifth back in the line. I was watching a young cashier because she really interested me. With every single customer, she was chatting and going back and forth, this whole conversation with every single customer. Now, some of the customers were just smiling and nodding and carrying on packing their groceries, but some of them were keeping up a conversation, having a little bit of back and forth. But she never skipped a beat. She just talked and talked and talked to every single person. So when it was my time, there was no one behind me in the line. And I said to her, I really admire you engaging every customer, speaking and being so lively and bright with them. And she paused and she just looked at me and went, it's utterly exhausting. And I didn't say anything because I was shocked. And she carried on and said, I am so freaked out about the silence, about the dead air, that I just constantly babble and babble and babble. She said, it is exhausting. And when I get home, I actually feel like such a fool that I just spoke and spoke and spoke. So I thought today is a good day to look at the topic of babbling. So if you know anybody who might fit into this area of babbling, talking, just to fill the air, share this with them. It would be a kind thing to do.
All eyes on me, I shine with everything I do.
Hi, I'm Jane and welcome back to my channel. Today we're talking about babbling. So let's start off with a definition. You know I love words. Babbling, the action or fact of talking rapidly and continuously in a foolish or excited manner, right? So now we know what babbling is. This is not someone who just speaks at length or someone who elaborates or goes on and on. It's that airy, light, just almost inconsequential chatter that some people keep up and up and up. And as I said, for many people, it is exhausting because they don't know what else to do in that situation. Now, babbling occurs because of several behaviors, but the one common thing we all know is the fact that it's when we are with strangers. Now, when I say strangers, I don't mean someone you've never clapped eyes on in your life before. I also mean someone who you might know at a superficial level, but you've never really engaged in much talking or conversation with them. So it could be that every morning for 5 years, you get into the elevator or the lift at work with the same person. You say, hello, good morning, gosh, the weather's good, gosh, the weather's bad, happy weekend, the usual pleasantries, and you go on your way. Now you're in a situation where you're stuck in a meeting room. This other person's there, never had them before in a meeting, and it's just the two of you for those first few minutes, and you just end up babbling, just filling the air with words. It can also happen on things like first dates, meeting somebody else's family for the first time. They leave the room and you're stuck with the rest of the family and you start this babbling. Your brain is screaming, stop, for heaven's sake, stop. But somehow your mouth doesn't get the message and you're on and on and on. So let's look at the three behaviors. The three key behaviors are important to understand because if you know where you fall in one of those, it'll go a long way to help you to figure out how I'm going to stop this. So the very first one is, as one would think, anxiety. You feel anxious, you feel a little unease, you feel uncertain, you've caught off guard, this is the first time you're with this person, you didn't expect this person to be there. That anxiety, that unease burns itself out of you by babbling. So the first thing to do, if you know that is your trigger, the anxiety, you need to say to yourself, quite clearly and simply, I don't feel the need to fill the air. I don't feel I should have to fill the air. You need to literally tell yourself that statement. I do not feel the need to fill the air. I do not feel that I should carry this whole conversation. The moment you give yourself permission to say, I'm not the only human in this room. There's another adult who's perfectly capable of contributing, and you just give yourself that grace to step back a little bit and remind yourself, this is not your burden. This is not your burden to bear. You're not expected to do the heavy lifting all on your own. Remind yourself, I'm not the only bright, shiny object in the room. I'm not the only entertainment center for this other person. This is a two-way street. So if that's your trigger, the anxiety, you need to tell yourself before you get into those situations, I don't need to feel it's my job to do this. This is not my burden to bear alone. The second area is control, and lots of people fall into this. The people who want control and end up babbling are those who do not trust the other people to speak. You assume that you are the person, you are the oracle of truth and light who's going to come and fill this space in this beautiful, eloquent fashion to entertain the other person because somehow, they really aren't trustworthy. They're not up to it. They're not going to be able to do it well enough. So they take the approach, the people who feel they need control, they take the approach of saying, I alone can fix this. I alone can solve this problem. So if your problem is control, you want to control that space, that air, that time, you need to say to yourself, I trust the other person. This is an adult. This is an educated human being. They will be able to meet me halfway. I do not have to keep up the endless stream of words. The third area, and this is something we all fall into, it could be that you just refuse to listen. And I think when I watched the young cashier, this is where I thought she was falling down, because there were customers who would come back, who would add to the conversation, who would ask a question, change a topic, go off on a bit of digression. That was her opening. That was her opportunity to just keep quiet, maybe prompt the person a little bit with one question, and then just go into listening mode. Just move into listening mode. Asking questions and listening is your biggest asset. So if you do find that you're not a terrifically good listener and you are babbling at somebody, you need to back down and remind yourself, wait a minute, I have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so as the old saying went. I need to listen twice as much as I speak. So I'm going to really listen to this person and I'm just going to feed them questions. The kind of who, what, when, where, why. Simplest questions, that's why we learn them in elementary, primary school. So just feed them a question and let them go in there. Because looking at the people in this line, this queue at the supermarket, many of them would have been happy to engage in a conversation and contribute 50%, 60, 70, whatever. But the young lady never gave them an opportunity. She was so convinced this was all her job to do. So she was a blend of all three, but listening would have served her so well at that point. And she had an excuse because she was doing something else at the time. So that was what was really interesting to me. So now we need to find the fix for this. We've identified the areas. We've also talked at potential solutions. You don't need to feel it's you. You need to trust other people. You need to ask questions. You need to listen. We've gone over all of that. But the most important point, and this, if you remember nothing else, please remember this. In those situations where your babbling default setting is triggered, you need to remind yourself, I don't have to be interesting. I don't have to be interesting 24/7, 100% of the time, the bright, shiny bauble in the room. I don't have to be interesting. All I have to be is interested. They don't need to think you're interesting, so don't do the work. But you need to find them interesting, fascinating. The moment you shift that burden over and you think, I'm just a participant here, I'm going to find this person absolutely fascinating, you'll switch the mode, you'll flip the table, and you will go into the mode where they, with the spotlight on them, will come to shine. You bring all your other skills to the fore, good listening, smile on your face, strong eye contact, and I guarantee you will find your desire, this urge to brrr, will be honed in and you can calm down a bit. So how are we going to practice this? I think we need to practice is silence, which is a very weird thing to be practicing on a public speaking channel. But what you're going to do is you're going to look ahead at your week and figure out where are those instances that you end up babbling. It could be a large part of your job, like the cashier, or it could be parts of your day, times of your week where you get into that babbling mode. Most of us know that. Most of us feel that's a situation where I tend to do this. So preparation is everything. Then when you get into that conversation, set yourself a goal of silence and say to yourself, once I have 2 or 3 sentences out the way, I'm going to keep quiet and I'm not going to do anything else apart from agree, nod, smile, or ask questions. I'm going to take an intentional decision to keep as quiet for as long as possible and let them do the speaking. It'll take practice. You need to repeat this, but constantly doing it over and over. I promise you, your stress levels will go down because you'll have that muscle memory to think, I can sit with this silence, or it shouldn't be silence, it might be quiet, but the other person's doing some speaking. Then there's a pause, then you ask a question, and then they do some speaking. That would be the natural cadence. So I urge you to try it. I guarantee it works, and you will feel so much better after those instances. If this has been helpful, please hit the like button below. And if you haven't yet subscribed, I would truly appreciate it. It keeps me coming back so that we can all grow together. I have a great video that links onto this one to layer on those skills. So if you jump to it there, you'll be able to see exactly how you can make this skill even better. Thanks for your time. I'll see you next week.
All eyes on me, I shine with